Okay, good morning. So last week we started our journey through L'Shem Yichud Kudsha Brichu Shchinte, and we spent most of the time on those who were opposed to the reciting of L'Shem Yichud, mainly the Noda B'Yehuda. We saw together the two Truvas in the Noda B'Yehuda. We also saw a fragment of what he writes in his Avas Tzion, in his drashas. And although he does give a very warm and embracing haskama to the Sefer Or L'Sharim, where the first drasha speaks about the significance and the importance of saying L'Shem Yichud, and based on that, the Satmar Rav was convinced that maybe he was choser to some degree. I think we were assuming the Pashut Pshat is that he was not choser. He was very clear in his opposition. To summarize briefly, why was he not a fan of saying L'Shem Yichud? So there was no indication that he felt the text itself was problematic. There was also no indication that he thought the whole thing was made up recently. What he did say, and this was the main focus of the Noda B'Yehuda, is that for the Hamon Am, for the masses, saying L'Shem Yichud was never a thing. For hundreds and hundreds of years of our Misorah, people before saying a bracha, before doing a mitzvah, they had in mind, I'm doing this, l'shem mitzvah. If there was a bracha associated with it, they would say the bracha. They would try to say it b'kavana, but they wouldn't say l'shem yichud. That was reserved for those yechidei skula, for those few people who were immersed in Kabbalah. But the idea of now publishing this text in all the Sidurim for everyone to say he was not a fan of, and he felt this was part of the evil sickness, as he referred to it, that was happening in his time in the 1700s, where there was this wave of hischadshus and Yiddishkeit, that people were introducing and innovating ideas that were never part of authentic Torah and mitzvos, and losing sight of the focus. And that's why he came out so strongly against the Hamon Am saying L'Shem Yichud. So it sounds like it was a jab. Right, he had that line that Tzadikim Yelchu Ba v'Chasidim Poshim Yikoshlu Bam. So we saw briefly at the end of last week's Shiur from the Chidah in his Sefer Simchas Regel that he says, in his opinion, this is actually on page 4. He says, I feel that most of the opposition of the Noda B'Yehuda was based on the fact that he was unhappy with some of the movements of the Hasidic movement in his place, in his time, and he had concern as to where it might lead. Historically speaking, I think we also mentioned this is right after Shabtai Tzvi. So introducing more Kabbalistic concepts for the masses, it was something that many Gedolei Yisrael were very concerned about. What's interesting is in the Sefer Divrei Yatziv, that's the Tshuva Sefer of the Kloisenberger Rebbe, he quotes from his grandfather, the Divrei Chaim, the Sanzerov, that he had a Kabbalah not to say L'Shem Yichud, and the reason for that was, this is the bottom of page 4, Shehad Tzedek Ibn Noda B'Yehuda Lagabe Amiris L'Shem Yichud Lahamon. He felt the Noda B'Yehuda was correct, that for the masses they should stay away from saying L'Shem Yichud. Shelo Ba L'Soda and Shel Devarim. They don't understand what the words mean. Similar to this, we find in the Chok Yaakov and Siman Taf Pei Tes, that's the Siman on Sfiras Omer, that he was also not a fan of saying L'Shem Yichud because these are ideas that are in Yonim Gavoim V'Nisgavim V'Hakol Ramazim Dakim. Your average person doesn't understand or appreciate them, and therefore stay away. To summarize briefly, it sounds like the main concerns of saying L'Shem Yichud, we have the Noda B'Yehuda, who was saying a general hashkafic issue to bring in something new to the masses of what they or how they practice Yiddishkeit, is a very, very risky move. That was the Noda B'Yehuda's approach. We also have the idea from the Divrei Yatziv and the Chok Yaakov We also mentioned this from the Chavas Yair last week, that people don't understand what they're saying. Now you might ask, well, there's a lot of the tefillos I don't really understand what I'm saying. Why is this any worse? Right? So it could be that if you have a little bit of a translation of the words, that could do more harm than good. Because the words themselves are very misleading. Again, l'shem yichud kudsha brichu shechinte. I'm doing this mitzvah or saying this particular tefillah in order to unify HaKadosh Baruch Hu with His Shechina. Superficially, that sounds like apikorsus, referring to the Borei Olam as there's two different powers, and through my mitzvah, through my bracha, I'm somehow connecting the powers above. If you don't really know what that means, so likely it's better not to say it, because that could really corrupt your hashkafa of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Now the Yavitz, of Yaakov Emden, in his siddur, this is on page 5. First we have a quote from the Yavitz where he speaks about his assumption as to what his father did. Who was the father of the Yavitz? The Chacham Tzvi.
We're going to cover what the correct interpretation, how to understand it.
We're going to cover a very simple understanding of what the words mean. What it actually means is definitely beyond the scope of this shiur and beyond the scope of the guy giving the shiur. But we'll try to understand the simple understanding. So first the Yavitz says, Echad shekol sodas hakabbalah hamechusim ukumusim v'rozel yonim nisgalu b'yameinu. We know generally the ideas of Kabbalah are hidden and they're concealed. However, a lot has been revealed in our time. V'nisgalgalu hadavarim shafilu amei haaretz she'enan makirin lashon hakodesh burya mitzaftzufin umahagim v'omrim hanusach l'kud shabrichu l'shem yichud. And we're at a point now, he writes, that many people who could barely read Hebrew are saying l'shem yichud. Shelo nisader kol iker ele l'tznuyin liyodim chein ha'omdim beheichal melech. And he echoes what we've seen until now. L'shem yichud, it's beautiful and it's authentic, but it was only intended for those who are yodim chein, who have a real understanding and misora in Kabbalah. However, he goes on to give a testimony about his father. My father, Avi Mori, Beheichel Melech, Madani al Abba Mari Hagon HaChosid Zal, Em Heyosa Noda Bishari HaChachma Amitis. Trust me, my father was well versed in both Nigla and Nister and the hidden areas of Torah as well. B'chol Beis HaZohar Neman v'Kabbalas Ari Zal Haya Shashu of Yom Yom. He was living in the house of the Zohar, and he would derive intense pleasure from all the teachings of the Arizal every day. And his entire behavior and conduct was based on the Ari and the Zohar. Aval hayanoig b'divreim shehem kivshono shelolam tznius yasera. But this thing I saw in my father was, although he had this incredible knowledge of Kabbalistic concepts, his actual behavior was b'tznius yasera v'kedusha atzuma. Kamo shehayazal kol inyan of mekayim b'hatznei aleches. Everything he did was always b'hatznei aleches. It was discreet, it was in private. Ume'olam lo shama adam mipiv divrei nusach hanal. And I guarantee you, nobody ever heard my father, the Chacham Tzvi, say the text of L'Shem Yichud. V'lo hotzi b'svasav kol nishma. Rak al libo haya medaber bli safek. However, without doubt, I know he said it. Meaning, in machshava, he was thinking L'Shem Yichud before engaging in mitzvos and tfilos, but he never said the words. Very interesting middle ground. The Noda B'Yehuda went so far as to say, at least for the masses, don't even think it. Why shouldn't you think it? So for the same reasons we mentioned, that if you don't understand really what it means, it could do more harm than good. The Chacham Tzvi understood what L'Shem Yichud means, and therefore he was thinking about that idea before doing a mitzvah. But he never said it. His whole practice of Kabbalah was B'hatznei Aleches. Now, although the Yavitz tells us that his father never said it, he does give us a perush of what the words mean. And they do happen to be in his siddur. Question, yeah?
I mean, obviously, there's a Kabbalistic source, but isn't it also just rooted in the Torah of Chesed, by Hashem the Kol Haaretz, and maybe Shiur Hashem Yachod Shema Yachod, right? That's like.
So we're going to get there. That seems to be the general idea. Not purely Kabbalistic, in the sense that if you know what it means, then it no longer feels like Kabbalah. The source of saying L'Shem Yichud or thinking something along these lines does seem to go back to the Zohar. One of the earliest svarim we have based on the Zohar that speaks about this idea is the Reishis Chachma. But let's take a look at the Yavitz together, where he now gives us a working, user-friendly definition of L'Shem Yichud. This is on page 5, right in the middle. L'Shem Yichud, Tachlis Habriya, Ha'avoda Haratzuya, the goal of creation, the avoda that we're striving for, V'shleimusa liyached hakol u'makor achdusa yisbarach, is to unify everything to its source, namely Hashem. Zehu L'Shem Yichud, and based on this idea, we say L'Shem Yichud, Kudsha, Toar Kedusha Mora, Alat Muso Yisbarach Hanelam Umufrash Mekol. When we say Kudsha Brichu, or in Hebrew, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that always has the connotation of referring to the Borei Olam Ba'atzmuso, meaning the essence of the creator of the universe. Infinite, eternal, beyond time and space, totally removed above and beyond anything we could ever be masig. That's Kudsha Brichu. Velis Beit Fisa Klal. We can say nothing about Kudsha Brichu. Ushchina, the term Shchina, Mora al Ritzono Hashochen Bisochenu Umakayim Osanu. Shchina is referring to the Ratzon Hashem, meaning the presence that we feel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You might say the words hashkacha, which many of the Mefarshim say. Shechina is the hashkacha, the presence, the kiyum, the infusion of life and vitality and direction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we say, Shechina. So every mitzvah, every bracha, every tefillah is L'Shem Yichud Kudsha Brichu U'Shechinte. So we're not actually combining two different forces of the divine. That would be bordering on Avodah Zarah. We believe very strongly in Hashem Echad. Hashem Echad is that the Borei Olam Kudsha Brichu is above anything we could possibly relate to. However, we know that there is clear hashkacha and guidance, and we could feel the presence of Hashem, and the shefa and the blessing and the bounty that comes from the Ein Sof, that we refer to as the Shechina. So liyached kudsha brichu u'shechinte is really more about asking or davening that through our ma'asim, through our mitzvos, we should be able to bring more of that Ein Sof into this world, to connect us more to that feeling and presence and the intensity of the hashkacha into Olam Hazeh. Then it goes on, B'dechilu u'rechimu. B'dechilu means with yira, with fear, with reverence. V'rechimu means with ava. So B'dechilu, says the Yavitz, B'mora hadin. So we know that, for example, the Shem Havaya has the connotation of rachamim, and then the Shem Elokim has the connotation of din. So b'dechilu, that's the din, the midas hadin, v'rechimu abas harachamim. That's this concept of the love of rachamim. We want to combine those two forces together. And again, we're going to explain what that means to the best of our abilities. Shem, Yud, and the Hey, together with the Shem, Vav, and the Hey. what does the Shem Yud and Hey together represent? Hu Hadin Mishem Havaya. That in the four-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shem Havaya, the Yud and the Hey seems to be referring to that Midas Hadin, that general, the concept of a Borei Olam, without a focus on the Rachamim, the infinite love. Adding in the Vav and the Hey, and we're not going to get into what do these particular letters represent, Din versus Ava, and the Vav, which is Tiferes, and the six, different Sviros. We're not getting into all of that. That's beyond our pay grade. But that's the adding in the Vav and the Hey is somehow incorporating the Rachamim. V'hu Yesod Kiyam Olam. As we see in the beginning of Bereshis, right? It starts off with Elokim, but then there was obviously a need for the Kiyam Olam to have the Midah of Rachamim as well. Al Yedei Shituf Din V'Rachamim Shlim. It should be a complete unification. Amiti Kertzon Habara Yisbarach. This is the Ratzon of Hashem. Then we conclude B'Shem Kol Yisrael. I'm doing this on behalf of all of the Jewish people. V'ani kolel asiyas mitzvah zu, says the Yavitz. I want to include in this mitzvah B'chlal asiyasa mikol Yisrael u'behem nimtzu b'nei Aliyah hamuchavanim ba'koroi. When I say B'Shem Kol Yisrael, that's really a declaration of humility. I don't really grasp this concept of unifying the Midas Hadin and the Midas Harachamim, or the concept of asking Hashem to have more of that presence that we could relate to and feel in this world. But I'm doing this mitzvah with all of the schusim of Klal Yisrael, because there are many tzaddikim and yechidei skula out there that do understand these ideas better. So I want to be riding on their coattails. Okay, was that clear? What?
Here I was thinking I was going to not have a coffee.
What's that? It's clear and it's a lot, right? So the one take home is that the reciting of the Shem Yichud, even though there's a lot more going on than what we can grasp, but Pashib Shat, psychologically, we're really asking for the shefa and the bracha that all comes from the Mekor HaChaim, that all comes from Hashem. We can't relate to Hashem, the essence of the Borei Olam, but whatever that hashkacha in this world is, and the blessing and the bounty and the clarity and ruchnius and gashmius that we could receive from Hashem, so we're just asking for Hashem to bestow more of that into our world through our maisim, right? Which is an amazing idea, and we actually spoke about this in the beginning of Shvi Shel Pesach. We quoted from the Svas Emes, who said that Pesach itself, right? That's obviously working with the premise that we believe in the Borei Olam. The whole experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim was reinforcing and clarifying our belief that not only is there a creator, but the creator is intimately involved with our daily existence. That's focusing on the belief in hashkacha. Kriyas Yamsuf, says the Sfas Emes, that was taking it one step further, which is we believe that our masim, our bitachon, our tefillah, can actually influence the hashkacha in this world. So like the Orach Chaim says, it was the bitachon of Klal Yisrael standing at Kriyas Yamsuf that allowed for this incredible hashkacha to take place. So it seems like this is a similar idea. We're asking, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please allow this mitzvah, this tefillah, to bring in more of your hashkacha, more of your shefa into our world. What's that?
What does this have to do with the unification of them?
So the way that we're understanding this yichud of kuchabrichu shchinte, of the yud and the hey with the vav and the hey, is just much more allow that hashkacha, that shelshelis of bracha to come into the world, meaning that we're tapping into that shechina, and in that sense, it's a unification. It's all coming from the source of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes?
Thank you. Why are you saying it here and not at the very beginning of the
That's a good question, right? Well, the truth is, we do find L'Shem Yichud in many places throughout the Siddur, depending on what Siddur you're using. But before Talis, before Tefillin, before Psukkah Zimra, you definitely have L'Shem Yichud. Usually it's before doing a mitzvah or saying a bracha prior to a mitzvah. The truth is, where and when we would say it, it sounds like might be somewhat based on different minhagim. No Rabbi Yehud would say you never say it, but those who do say it, depends on your minig. What I want to do is like this. Where else do we have this concept that we're kind of relating to by L'Shem Yichud that we actually do and think about every single day, many times a day, even if you never say L'Shem Yichud? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav. Every bracha that we make, we're really incorporating the ideas of L'Shem Yichud. So let's take a look here together. There's a famous piece in the Nefesh HaChaim in Shar Beis, where he speaks about the word Baruch. What do you have in mind when you say Baruch atah Hashem? Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe. So to give a blessing to Hashem is somewhat troubling. You would assume HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need our bracha. So one simple understanding of those three words, Baruch atah Hashem, and we do find this in many Rishonim, is that Baruch is a Lashon Toar. It's a description. Hashem is Rachum v'Chanun, and Hashem is Baruch. Right? You are the source of bracha. It's a declaration. Baruch atah Hashem, you are the source of bracha. If I'm about to benefit from something, I'm saying a shahakol or a mazonos, so I'm reminding myself that this hana from Olam Hazeh is coming from you. You're the source of everything. If I'm asking Hashem for something, it's a bakasha. So then I'm reminding myself that refuah and parnasa and shidduchim and everything I'm davening for, you're the makor habracha. That's why I'm turning to you. And if I'm saying a bracha before a mitzvah, I'm reminding myself that the incredible bracha and opportunity that we have through doing a mitzvah is coming from you, because you're the makor bracha. The Nefesh HaChaim, though, adds another dimension to what we have in mind when we say Baruch atah Hashem, and we actually find this in the Rabbeinu Bachai as well. Inyan milas Baruch, eino loshen tehila v'shevach kamo sheshom bi hamon. The word Baruch does not just mean a language of praise and gratitude, like. Okay, well, we're going to see. We're going to see. Thank you. The literal translation is, it's not a praise and gratitude, like many people assume. The real translation of Baruch is Tosefis Veribui, addition and abundance. Okay, so then how are we adding? We're adding to Hashem. We're saying that we want to give you Tosefis and Ribui. Ein hakavana la'atmus adon yachid baruchu kaviyachol. So says Reb Chaim Volozhin, it doesn't mean that we're trying to add to the infinite. Chalila v'chalila. God forbid that would be apikorsis. Kihu meruma me'al kol bracha. Hashem is obviously elevated above all of our blessings. However, the concept is, based on what we find in the language of the Zohar, the kudsha brichu sasim vegalia. Hashem is concealed and also revealed. Ki atmus ein sof baruchu sasim mikol stimin. That the essence of the Borei Olam is concealed and hidden in the most powerful way. Ve'ein lichnosu chas v'sholem b'shum shem klal. There's nothing we can say. There is no description that we could possibly give to somehow attribute to the Ein Sof to Hashem. Afilu b'shem Havaya Baruch Hu, even when saying the actual name of Hashem, we're not really speaking directly to the Ein Sof. Everything is just a way of using language because we have nothing else to use. Umasha Musa gets leinu kitzas. What we can somewhat understand, v'anu mechanim u'metarim kama ta'arim m'shemos v'kinuyim u'midos. We do use many different descriptions and qualities. Kamosha metzinu b'torah b'chol matbeya tefillah, like we find throughout Tanakh and also in every text of tefillah. Kulam heim rak mitzad his chabruso yisborach el haolamos v'hakochos me'es habriya. Whatever we're describing is not the essence of Hashem, but rather it's what we're perceiving, what we're receiving from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem's connection, so to speak, to all of the different worlds and dimensions and spheros that bring that shefa and ruchnius and bracha into our world. V'hei masher korim b'shem hishtalshus hasviros. This is what we refer to as the chain of the spheros. The spheros are almost like, conceptually, this system of filtration of Kedusha, where the Ein Sof is a light that's so above and beyond anything we could possibly relate to. So you have different levels of Shalshelis Hasviros bringing that Shefa and Kedusha into our world. Va'afilu Hashem etzem hamayuchad havaya baruch hu lo al atzmuso yisbarach levad anu miyachtim lo elam mitzad his chabruso yisbarach ima olamos. Even when we say the actual Shem of Hashem, we're relating to Hashem the best we can through that filtration system. V'zeh kol hasagaseinu kaviyachol oso yisborach hakol mitzad inin his chabruso ela lomos v'hishtashpuso yisborach besocha ulechein kavu anshe knesset hagadola hanusach shel kol brachos hamitzvos beloshen nochach v'nister. That's why when the men of the Great Assembly created the text of every blessing, within the same bracha, we have a language of nochach and a language of nister. Nochach means I'm speaking directly to you, right? Where do we find nochach in the language of a bracha? Atah, right? Baruch atah, I'm speaking to you directly, Hashem. But then we also find nister, which is more of the third person. Asher kiddishanu, that you've commanded us, but it's not speaking to you. He, thank you, not you. He who has commanded us in whatever the mitzvah is we're saying a bracha over. Shemitzad his chabruso yisbarach b'ritzono elo lomo shayidezeh yesh lanu kitzas hasaka koldahu anu medabrim lenochach baruch atah Hashem. So whatever feeling of that presence that we can relate to in this world, right, within the confines of time and space, we should never feel that we're totally removed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We could mamish feel Hashem's presence. And that's why we say, Baruch atah Hashem. I'm speaking directly to you. But at the same time, in the same bracha, the Anshe Knesset Gedola instituted that we use a lashon of nister, where it's what Hashem did, not me speaking to you, because the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something above and beyond me. Okay, so what is he saying here? Silence. Baruch atah Hashem. When you think about it, it's an incredible chutzpah to refer to the Borei Olam as you. Right? If you're going to a very chashav Rosh Hashiva, generally the minig is you don't speak to him in second person, right? It's always in third person. Can I get the Rosh Hashiva a glass of tea? when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're speaking it directly. You, Baruch Atah Hashem. So how is he translating the word Baruch? It's not just praise, Tehillah v'Shevach, but it's Tosefis and Ribui. So we're not adding anything to you. What are we adding? So what the Nefesh HaChaim is saying is that every time we make a declaration, we say a bracha, it's not only a statement of belief, but it's also a tefillah. It's also a prayer that through this mitzvah that I'm about to do, or even through this engaging in a pleasure that this world has to offer, my recognition that everything comes from you, that you are the Makor Bracha, there's a tefillah of Baruch Atah Hashem, that there should be more bracha, meaning that your essence should bestow more bracha upon us, bracha in Gashmias and bracha in Ruchnias, as we're about to engage in this particular activity. That sounds very similar to the way the Yavitz was explaining L'shem Yichud Kudsha Brichu Ushechinte. I'm getting a lot of blank stares over here.
Still why the word atah?
What?
Still why the word atah? Why can you have the word
So that, what's that? Well, I'm saying Baruch Atah. Okay, so what do the words actually mean? I'm saying this bracha. Baruch Atah Hashem. You are the source of bracha, right? We're not saying that the simple pshat is not true, but included in my machshava of Baruch Atah Hashem, there's also a tefillah. There's a prayer that you being the source of bracha should be a source for us as well to continue Tosefis and Ribui bracha through the mitzvah I'm about to engage in.
It's still the atah. We're still saying that. Why is it a chutzpah that rather than just?
Oh, so why is it not chutzpah? The answer is it is chutzpah. But that's the relationship that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to have with us, right? That there's a feeling of friendship. Usruas melech bo. The friendship of the king is with Klal Yisrael. Right? Lecha dodi likras kala. Who's dodi? Come, my beloved, let us go together and greet the Kala of Shabbos. Dodi is Hashem. You're referring to Hashem as your friend? And the answer is yes, because we're striving for a real loving relationship. That's the whole Megillah of Shir Shiurim. Because there really is that hischabrus, that connection, that kesher. At the same time, we're also realizing Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvosav, right? He sanctified us through His mitzvos. That the essence of the Borei Olam I have no grasp of, I have no hasaga of. So this understanding of Baruch Atah Hashem, every bracha we make, seems to be very similar to the way that the Yavitz is explaining L'shem Yichud Kudsha Brichu. Yes. Why what?
Why wouldn't you have a share Krishna on every bracha then? Like we're having the second person view, and we have the share Krishna the one who.
Okay, so even if it's not a berachas mitzvah, we only say Asher Kedishanu before doing a mitzvah. But let's say a bracha of Hana. We just say Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu, Melech HaOlam. Melech HaOlam is that language of Nister. Melech HaOlam, right? So in every bracha you have Nochach and you have Nister, but the idea seems to be Borei Pri Hagofen. Borei Menei Mezonos, right? He who creates, the creator of. Yes.
So with theory with the Muslim movement, what Shabbat would be when we count spirit, he's already using the language of Kabbalah here, Sfirot, Ishtalshalut, all of that. Why the discomfort with changing the
Oh, so that's a good question. Meaning,
already in the
right? What's that? The question is that even in this little snippet of Nefesh HaChaim, right? He's definitely working within the vocab of Zohar, and much of the Nefesh HaChaim is basically directly quoting from the Zohar. Now, what is the opinion of Reb Chaim Volozhin when it comes to saying L'Shem Yichud? So I looked around. In that sefer that we quoted last week from Reb Asher Weiss, he quotes a paragraph from Reb Chaim Volozhin, his commentary on Pirkei Avos, the Ruach Chaim. And he says over there that it seems clear from the Ruach Chaim that Reb Chaim Volozhin would support the saying of L'Shem Yichud. However, when you look up the quote in the Ruach Chaim, I think a purely objective reading is that Reb Chaim Volozhin is not saying necessarily that one should say L'Shem Yichud before doing a mitzvah. What it sounds like he's saying is that there's a reality to this Yichud of Kudshu Brichu Shechinte when I perform a mitzvah. But that the Noda B'Yehuda would totally agree to. The Noda B'Yehuda told us that, yes, it's all happening, but your thinking about it is not going to make it happen any better or any quicker, and it could just corrupt your whole hashkafa. So I personally don't think there's any clear indication from Reb Chaim Volozhin himself if he would be on board to say L'Shem Yichud or if he would be more in the camp of the Noda B'Yehuda. I think the point, though, is like this. No one's debating these concepts. He still might be hesitant, like the Noda B'Yehuda, not to say L'Shem Yichud because that particular text definitely has this connotation of two different kochos and uniting different powers. That could be confusing for the masses. But what we do see is that, at least the way the Yavitz explains L'Shem Yichud, it's a very similar intention to what we should have in mind in every bracha that we're saying throughout the day. Yes, doctor.
I mean, I guess I don't have such a good handle on like sources of things, but it seems like everywhere we talk about different aspects of Hashem's expression in the world. Like, Din and Rachamim, like that's like something that we talk about on Yom Kippur davening. Move from one seat to another. Hashem has different. That's like something that you go through when you.
You're asking, why is this more dangerous than many of the other things we say about? Yes.
Or just even that Hashem is talking to you. Okay, so what is that like?
Right.
Moshe saw some kind of form of like. There's all sorts of things. That
We have many places throughout Chazal and in the liturgy that seems to speak about different midos of Hashem. My feeling is the reason why this is more complicated is because usually the term Kudshu Brichu and the term Shechina, those are not references to qualities or midos or descriptions. Those are ways of talking about God. Right, but I think that's what is more of a concern. If you're saying, I want to connect God with God, so then that's definitely more concerning than Midas Hadin and Midas Harachmim. Anyway, like we started off the last time, if you've been saying it until now because that's your Masorah, you'll continue saying it, hopefully with a little bit more of an understanding. If you have not been saying it until now, you'll continue not saying it. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.
Why is that connected more to the Shiur?
What's that?